Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us this morning. We're going to get started. Before I call this meeting to order, I'll note for the record that I will serve as the acting chair for today's meeting. I now call to order the meeting of the directors of the New York State Urban Development Corporation, DBA Empire State Development, for Thursday, February 18th, 2016. As noted on the agenda posted to the internet, we welcome public comment on the items on the following agenda. To ensure maximum opportunity for participation, speakers representing themselves may speak for up to 2 minutes each, and those representing groups may speak for up to 4 minutes with one speaker per group. Speakers' comments may address only the items considered at today's meeting. At this time, I will ask the directors whether anyone has any potential conflict of interest with respect to any of the items on the agenda. If so, I'll ask you to please make an appropriate disclosure on the record now, and we will then remind you to recuse yourself from any discussion or vote with regard to such item or items. Anyone? Okay, I have to abstain from the administrative item whereby the NFTA is transferring ownership of the port terminals in the Outer Harbor in Buffalo to Empire State Development, since I serve as chairman of the NFTA. Now, the cruel irony of this is that I spent 2 years working to transfer the property out of the NFTA so I wouldn't have anything to do with it. This is what we call a boomerang.
No good deed goes unpunished.
No good deed goes unpunished. But anyway, it's good for Buffalo, and it's good for Western New York. So I have noted that for the record. As a reminder, we will continue the process of focusing on each region's strategic plan and present the projects by region when we turn to the project section of the agenda, and the vote will be taken at the end of the presentation for each region. As always, the directors have received the written materials in advance of the meeting, and they are free to ask questions at any time during the presentations. The first item on today's agenda is the approval of the minutes of the January 21st, 2016 directors meeting. Are there any questions, comments, additions, or deletions? Is there a second? Thank you very much. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The motion carries. I'll now ask the directors to approve the appointments of the following individuals as officers of the corporation: Lindsay Boylan as Chief of Staff to the President and CEO, Jeffrey Nordhaus as the Executive Vice President of Innovation and Broadband, and Kevin Eunice as Chief Operating Officer. Any questions or comments from the directors with respect to these appointments? Are you sure you guys still want to do this job?
Who are you?
Okay. Hearing none.
You're Lindsay?
Are there any comment? Oh, sorry, Lindsay,
The other couple.
Kevin
Kevin,
Eunice.
You're and Kevin, yeah, okay.
And Jeff.
Not here.
Jeff is not here?
broadband.
He's the
Oh, he had
broadband
a
guy.
presentation on broadband elsewhere.
Kevin, he's a broadband guy.
Yep.
Presented at the door
Okay,
as
so
well.
broadband is not here.
Not here.
Kevin's the COO, then Jeff Nordhaus is broadband. He's not here.
Okay.
Okay.
Sure?
Any comments from the public with respect to these nominations, appointments?
So move.
Is there a second? Thank you. The motion carries, and congratulations to you, Lindsay, Kevin, Jeff. I'll now ask Benson Martin to present an item relating to the appointment of members to ESD's Bond Financing and Governance Committee. Benson?
Good morning. The directors are being requested to approve the appointment of Sharon Imami, Acting Superintendent of the New York State Department of Financial Services, to the Bond Financing Committee of the corporation. By way of background, the Bond Financing Committee was created to oversee activities involving the sale or issuance of bonds or notes by the corporation. The directors are also being requested to approve the appointments of Howard Zemsky, President and CEO of Empire State Development and Commissioner of the New York State Department of Economic Development, and Hilda Rosario Escher, President and Chief Executive Officer of Ibero-American Action League, to the Governance Committee of the corporation. The Governance Committee was established to keep directors informed of current best practices, review corporate governance trends, examine ethical and conflict of interest issues, and perform board self-evaluations, among other things. As indicated in the materials provided to the directors, Commissioner Zemsky, Acting Superintendent Imami, and Ms. Escher possess the necessary skills to understand the duties and functions of the committees, and we recommend their appointments. Thank you.
Move.
Thank you, Benson. Any questions or comments from the directors with regard to this item?
Let's quickly vote them in.
Any comments from the public with regard to this item? Okay, now we'll entertain a
Move.
motion. to
Sorry.
approve. No
Aye.
problem. Is there a second? Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. We'll now move on to the report section of the agenda. I'll start with really an introduction of Jim Fail and Rob Simpson. So Jim, as many of you know, is our regional director, our esteemed, accomplished regional director in Central New York, which, by the way, just won $500 million as part of the competition, Governor launched in last year's budget, the Upstate Revitalization Initiative. And Rob Simpson, who's the president of Center State, CEO of the Corporation for Economic Opportunity in Central New York, is really the largest business membership organization in the region, Rob. Rob also co-chairs the Central New York Regional Economic Development Council, and Rob is another person who agreed to do this for 2 years, who's now celebrating his 5th or 6th.
That's also a good deed on.
Yes, it is. It's very impressive.
Rewarding.
It's very impressive, and I think it's important. So we've invited both of these gentlemen to join us because they've done an excellent job in economic development in Central New York and also with the planning. And, so much of the success of these regions revolves around the quality of their plan and the fact that all the projects that come our way typically are advanced by the region and are looked through the filter of that strategic plan. And it's also important to note that ESD works collaboratively and cooperatively with a number of organizations throughout the state in order to do economic development properly and to do it successfully. And Rob is a perfect example of how we are close collaborators with the business community, whether it's the industrial development authorities or the business development organizations or chambers of commerce. Economic development does not start and stop with ESD. We're have an integral role, and many times we're kind of the nexus of it, and we bring a lot of tools to the economic development toolbox, but working collaboratively with so many of these state organizations, regional organizations across the state, I think has been an important part of our success. And so I want to recognize you two gentlemen for doing a great job. Rob, thank you for your volunteerism in this role, which has been really impactful for Central New York. And Jim, thank you for your leadership on behalf of ESD. You guys have a presentation on your regional strategy and the upstate revitalization, so I'm going to get out of the way and let you get started, but thank you for being with us.
Thanks, Howard.
Jim, your predecessors were very dynamic and compelling, so I hope you're okay.
Yeah, those, nicely done. Yes, well, I did actually have the opportunity to see the previous things to get a little coaching, so hopefully I can stay to that level. I'd like to thank Howard and the board for giving us this opportunity, this exciting opportunity. I've been with the agency almost 8 years now. It's the first time I've been able to present to the board, so I appreciate this opportunity and talk to you a little bit about Central New York. I'm going to focus the first part of the presentation more on just Central New York and kind of the overarching dynamics of it, and then I'm going to turn it over to Rob to talk about our upstate revitalization initiatives. What you're looking at here is downtown Syracuse, and it kind of is the focus of our Hill to Lake strategy. So right here you'll see is the Carrier Dome and Syracuse University. Adjacent to that is SUNY Environmental Science and Forestry School. We have the SUNY Upstate Medical Teaching and Hospital over in this area, along with Krause Hospital and the Veterans Hospital. So up on the hill you have this focus of academia and healthcare, and then focusing and then moving down into the heart of the downtown. So over the last 10 years, there's been a major effort to do what's called the connective corridor. Many of you have heard about projects along there connecting the hill to the business district and redeveloping this area. Over the last 5 or 6 years, there's been a great success in building population base. There's been over 2,000 housing units put in here through the restoration of old buildings and mixed use. And our final push is to go out to Onondaga Lake and the Inner Harbor. Onondaga Lake was at one point the most polluted lake in the country, and recently Honeywell has finished a $2 billion dredging operation, which has revitalized the lake and brought it back to life, and is the focus of the development of the Inner Harbor.
What were they dredging for?
PCBs mainly, mercury, all that. It was.
What were they making up there? Capacitors?
Well, it was decades long of just I'm not even sure.
Yeah, I mean,
all kinds of
originally large-scale salt works, brine, ultimately chemical processing right on the shores of the lake. Allied Signal.
Yeah. Here's the regional office. I've been blessed to have some very seasoned veterans. Ray Lawrence has been with the agency for over 32 years. He started with the original coal mining agents administration. Marcia Mills, 25 years. Quinn Hubbard, 20 years. Bonnie Palmer, 15. So they provide excellent leadership for a couple of our younger up-and-coming people, Jason Kies and Zach Becker. I assure you that is not how I typically dress in the office, but this was taken on Tuesday when I was doing a site selection tour up in Oswego County with a massive snowstorm. So,
Can't see his boots.
yeah, I've been in those situations where you get stuck, and it's really kind of ugly when you're trying to push yourself out. Central New York is at the crossroads of Interstate 81, which is the north-south from Canada down to Washington, and east-west of I-90. Consists of 5 counties, 4 major cities: Cortland, Auburn, Oswego up on the port of Oswego, and Syracuse right in the center. Syracuse is being the largest of the cities at about 180,000 people, and the total region has about 750,000 population base. We've been very successful thanks to the leadership of people like Rob Simpson and our regional council in our Regional Economic Development Council competitions. We have actually received more funding than any region in the state. Through the first 4 rounds, we've received over $340 million in funding. ESD projects have included about 132 of that. And to date, we've created over 1,000 jobs, which is about halfway of what our projected job creation numbers were for those projects. As Howard alluded to earlier, we were fortunate to be one of the 3 URI winners. As a result of the first-year investment, that will lead to 45 additional jobs or projects with about $500 million in project expenses and the expected job creation of about 1,000 jobs with that as well. The key to our success, I believe, is that the council has always focused on 3 major overarching goals that we've built our strategies. The first is our targeted industries, so to focus on our historical industry base in radar and sensor, healthcare, advanced manufacturing with companies like Lockheed Martin, Saab Census, Welch Allen, Bristol Myers, and to ensure that they are targeted and we're focusing on helping them grow. The other is to focus on our urban core. The council strongly believes that you build from the inside out, and having a strong core, and not just for your major cities like Syracuse, but also for your smaller villages and communities and hamlets that, a $100,000 investment can go a long way in revitalizing those communities. So to ensure that there's facade and utility upgrades to ensure that business are making investments in those core areas for whether it's retail or commercial, and building on that. And then the final is to work with our companies to increase their exporting initiatives by providing educational opportunities, trade missions to areas such as China and Europe. So as you can see, we've had every one of our projects have hit at least one of these goals. 28% of our projects have hit 2 of the goals, and 13% of the projects have hit all 3 goals. So we always focus on these areas. About $77 million had gone into our targeted industry sectors, about 73 in the urban core, so fairly evenly distributed, and about 16 million for our exporting initiatives. A couple of projects I just would highlight that have been successful here. One is the Cayuga milk ingredients. This kind of hit both of our targeted industries. That agriculture is a very strong industry in our region, as well as exporting. This is a milk processing facility that takes liquid milk and turns it into a powder, which is then shipped around the world to places like South America, Africa, Middle East, where they don't have an abundance of cows. The owners of this facility also accompanied Governor Cuomo last year on his trade mission to Cuba, and is hoping once Congress releases some of the restrictions to get some trade initiatives going with Cuba. Another one of our core initiatives that the board has approved funding for is the restoration of our Hotel Syracuse. There's a 94-year-old historic hotel in the heart of downtown that has been vacant for 15 years. This project is really embraced and gotten the community to all come together and work together, the county, the city, even the surrounding communities, made sure there was significant investment in revitalizing this hotel. It's targeted for its soft opening next month for St. Patrick's Day to honor the deep Irish history of central New York, which Mr. Eunice is a little bit aware of, and we'll have a hard opening in June. This has been an icon in the community that has had proms and weddings, and there's already been over 30 weddings booked for a hotel that hasn't even been reopened. So
I think one thing it needed it.
it did. It certainly did. So, so moving on to our URI investments. Again, we built on our three core initiatives, and built then and took it out into 6 other kind of focus areas that Rob will get into deeper on, but one of our key areas is the unmanned systems. We have a great opportunity there, and again, that's building on our traditional base of radar and sensoring companies we're creating a logistic hub and global manufacturing port, which again will help with our exporting initiatives. The Alliance for Economic Inclusion is to help address our deep poverty concerns and issues that we have in central New York. Along with our consensus, which is helping with modernizing our local governments, and then developing a national veterans resource complex. We have a lot of veterans that you'll hear about, and Fort Drum is a mere 60 miles north of us, so there's a significant investment in that. Those kind of are all in our urban core areas. And then our Grow New York certified program, again focusing on agriculture and our exporting initiatives through creating longevity. And so at this point in time, I'd like to turn the portion of the program over to Rob Simpson, who Howard had mentioned has been on the council since the beginning. He is a key advocate and a great partner. Without his leadership, this region would not be as successful as it's been, and he's committed his team to helping make sure that we have success year in and year out. And I'm fortunate, and the region is fortunate to have someone like Rob on our team.
Great.
Jim, just very briefly, what was the industry 100 years ago that led to a hotel as ornate as the Syracuse Hotel?
Well, we, ironically, we're kind of unique in that we have a very diversified economy and always have, and there's not one industry that has more than 9% of our overall employment base. But some of our historic industries has been in the automotive sector, manufacturing, Carrier Corporation, and indoor heating and HVAC. There's always been a healthcare focus with companies like Bristol Myers Squibb and those types of things. And of course, salt was really a key part. It was connected along the Erie Canal traditionally, and so those were kind of some of the core industries.
Great. Well, thank you all very much for the invitation to be here, and Howard for the partnership, and maybe most importantly to Jim, who with the expense of this sounding a bit like a mutual adoration society, has been a tremendous partner for the business community in Central New York. His phone is always on, his door is always open. And I think one thing that I would just recognize that in Central New York, we've taken a slightly different approach than some other regions with respect to our regional council funding. If you look back over 4 years, 5 years now of projects, you'll find very few large-scale investments, very many projects that have the ability to have a significant impact with a relatively small amount of capital. We have been conscious of not trying to spread the state's investments too thin. At the same time, we've been very conscious about stewarding the state dollars, and the impact that that's had on Jim and the regional office has been that they have over 1,000 projects over 5 rounds to track, to evaluate, to monitor, to ensure compliance. That's been a significant amount of work not only for his team but for our council, but ultimately it gives us the breadth of reach as a region to touch more companies, to have more impact, and frankly to steward public dollars, I think, as best we possibly can. Jim mentioned our opportunity in unmanned systems, and I just reiterate, we do not have a single industry more than 9% of total employment in Central New York. In fact, we have 13 industries between 5 and 9% of total employment in Central New York. We have one of the most highly diversified economies in the country, let alone in New York State. That makes traditional approaches to sector development very difficult. Some places you think about places like Memphis, Tennessee, down south, where they've been very focused on transportation logistics. 42% of their employment is in that one sector. They can put a sector-driven initiative together and really move the regional economy. In Central New York, we can't. About 4 years ago, we joined with the Brookings Institution to do some groundbreaking work around not just looking at our industry sectors, the traditional cluster analysis that takes place, but trying to better understand what our core competencies as a region were in manufacturing and research and development, innovation and technology, and determined that, frankly, we have a very robust and cross-cutting technology platform in sensors, analytics, and cybersecurity that is very powerful and crosses 6 or 7 of our major industry sectors. It crosses healthcare, indoor environmental systems in building controls, defense, radar and electronics and sensors, digital, cybersecurity, and more. As a result of that, we have worked very hard over the last several years to identify where our core technology competencies as a region line up with emerging market opportunities, both nationally and internationally. Understanding that we're going to be successful if we can help our companies in the region develop entree into new and growing markets into which they can sell their products. That has resulted in a couple of groundbreaking partnerships, one of them being Central New York being awarded 3 years ago one of 6 FAA test site designations for unmanned systems integration into the commercial airspace. Very proud of the fact that it's been a partnership between Central New York and the Mohawk Valley over the course of the last 3 years, and it has paid significant dividends for us. We are now having conversations with partners not only around the country but around the world. Many large-scale companies are utilizing our assets in Central New York to test the safe integration of these vehicles. What we know is that this is a growing global market opportunity moving towards $1 trillion market at some point in the next decade and beyond. There are very real public policy challenges associated with unmanned systems, whether they be aerial vehicles, ground-based vehicles, and so on and so forth. But there is a technology continuum from communications, cybersecurity, sensing, materials science that play very well into our region's strengths and frankly into the strengths of all of the state of New York. We have proposed as part of the Upstate Revitalization Initiative a $250 million investment in a research, development, and demonstration project around unmanned systems and cross-connected platforms. Cross-connected platforms being broadly defined the greater Internet of Things, right? Any electronic device that connects to itself or to the Internet. Unmanned vehicles being obviously one of the largest scale applications of such devices. This is a research partnership that involves federal government partners, the FAA, the Department of Defense, NASA is a leading partner in our proposal to New York State, actually helping to develop and demonstrate a next generation air traffic management system that will enable the safe integration of what is a highly complex challenge. And to give you a sense of the scale of the challenge, there are 5,000 commercial flights that crisscross the United States during the course of any given day. Between September and December 25th of this holiday season, there were more than 1 million drones sold in the United States, primarily for recreational use. That happened in a 3-month period of time. The growth in that market is exponential, and our air traffic management system as it currently sits is not capable of integrating these vehicles safely into the commercial airspace. So in order to unlock the economic potential in agriculture, in search and rescue, in insurance, in other industries, we have to be able to demonstrate that we can do that in a fashion that is safe, that's secure, and guarantees privacy. Working with NASA, we not only want to test and demonstrate that traffic management system, but we also want to build a one-of-a-kind facility in the world whereby manufacturers of unmanned systems and other connected platforms can test and certify their systems to standards that ultimately we will work to set together with the federal government around battery life, around performance in wind-based conditions, cybersecurity, information assurance, and more. All told, this is a $250 million investment that we've proposed and the single largest initiative in the Upstate Revitalization Initiative proposal for Central New York. At the same time that we want to make investments in manufacturing and high technology, we also recognize that our region is sort of exists in a dual nature. Jim joked about a meeting up in Oswego County, but this is the reality we live every day. 85% of the geography in our 5-county region is rural and remains very much agrarian. Agriculture is still a huge part of our economy. More than 200 food processing facilities exist in Central New York, and we are seeing tremendous growth in that industry. But we do have some challenges, one of which being the shortness of our growing season. Part of our proposal in the URI is to make investments in controlled environment agriculture, technology that's being used in other parts of the world, to extend the growing life, to produce more produce, to shorten cycle times, and ultimately allow us to increase production in Central New York. Corresponding with an increase in production is a desire for us to get better at packaging and processing, so that we, one, capture more value from the food production that we're generating in Central New York, but two, so that we are in a position to even further add value by extending the shelf life of products, whether it be dairy, fruits, vegetables, through technologies like aseptic packaging, which would allow locally grown and locally processed foods in Central New York to reach markets on the other side of the world without the need for refrigeration, and significantly reducing the cost of transportation. That plays right into the governor's strategy around global New York, ties right into our regional strategy around building our export economy, and we are very, very bullish. In fact, later, I guess next week, I'll be in Kansas City meeting with a partner with whom we're talking about a significant investment in an aseptic packaging facility in Central New York. Hopefully you start to get a sense for the connectivity between these initiatives, but as we talk about trying to build our export economy, our transportation logistics infrastructure is a critical component of that. You may be aware that we were one of 4 pilot sites for the President Obama's National Export Initiative going back 4.5 years ago. And as part of that work that we've done with the Department of Commerce and the Brookings Institution, we have a very robust strategy around building our metropolitan export capacity. A significant component of that is investment in transportation infrastructure, primarily in rail infrastructure, which in Central New York is highly underutilized. We sit at a tremendous crossroads with the Thruway and Interstate 81. We've always had and have a growing trade and transportation logistics industry. We believe we can further grow that with investments in rail, particularly intermodal. Not only can we make investments that can create jobs in Central New York by building out further warehousing and distribution capacity, but we can also solve a very significant problem that we have here in downstate New York and create an upstate solution for a downstate problem. And that problem, as you all know, is the congestion that exists at the Port of New York and New Jersey. Increasingly, with new ships coming through the expanded Panama Canal, with the raising of the bridge, there is going to be increased volume in an already congested port. We believe that we can be a provider to support the port's expansion by being a conduit and essentially an intermodal facility 225 miles from the Port of New York with a direct rail connection. And actually, we have 2 direct rail lines that connect into the Port of New York, New Jersey, a CSX line, as well as a combination of Norfolk Southern and the New York S&W Railroad. We're proposing the investment in what we call our global manufacturing and logistics hub. This would be an inland port. You've probably heard the term in other places. An intermodal container facility whereby products that are destined for export markets can be aggregated and ultimately loaded on trains down to the Port of New York, as well as product coming off of trains direct from the ships to Central New York, where they can be decontainerized, warehouse, distributing, as well as next-to-rail manufacturing, something which creates huge cost advantages. This facility offers us the potential for two things. One, which is we believe we can reduce the cost of importing and exporting goods out of central New York by utilizing rail more effectively by upwards of 40 to 50%. That's a huge cost advantage for manufacturers and agricultural producers in particular, not the least of which is we also believe we can site this facility in a location that could lead to as many as 2 million square feet of additional warehousing and distribution space. We've allocated $40 million in our URI funds to build on an investment that Governor Cuomo has already made in an inland port facility in central New York. Our goal being to create as many as 2,000 port and warehousing and distribution jobs over the course of the next 5 years. One of the significant challenges, while there are lots of opportunities in central New York, are the statistics, and they're incredibly stark around the growing income inequality in our region. The reality is that we have a significant problem with poverty, not just in our urban areas and our rural areas. To put a finer point on it, the city of Syracuse is the 23rd poorest city in America. If you look down even further into the demographics, we have the highest poverty of any city in the country among our African American population, the highest poverty of any city in America amongst our Hispanic population. This is not just a social challenge for central New York, this is an economic problem. This is a problem that our elected leaders understand, our community understands, that the business community understands, and a sustainable economy will be one where we are successful at rising incomes at all levels. We're proposing a $50 million investment inside the URI directly targeted at strategies that help educate both children and adults, train workforce for the jobs that we're creating in these additional industries, provide access to employment via support services, things like transit and others, and also build the capacity of many of our community institutions, including the development of the first minority chamber of commerce in upstate New York, something that we're actively working on in Syracuse and central New York. All told, we have a strong belief that we will not be successful at building an economy for the long run in central New York if we don't find a way to tackle head-on what is a clearly difficult challenge. And this is true in Rochester and true in Buffalo, but this is an issue that we cannot and we are not intending to ignore. Another population that has often not factored as heavily into our thought process as a country as it probably needs to is our veteran population. Chancellor Syverud at Syracuse University is my co-chair. Syracuse University has a long reputation dating back to World War I as being a premier institution for service to veterans and their military families. The Chancellor is committed to building and growing upon that. The simple fact is this: 1 million service members will be terming out of service over the course of the next 5 years, 200,000 a year. They are in need of entrepreneurial training, they are in need of workforce retraining, they are in need of medical and mental health care services. Syracuse University is proposing a National Veterans Resource Complex. It is a one-of-its-kind facility in the country to aggregate those services, not only that the university provides, but that other community and national partners provide. In so doing, the university believes they can provide service over the next 5 years to as many as 48,000 veterans and their military families. That's important for a couple of reasons, not the least of which is our labor market in central New York has been shrinking over the course of the last 5 years. That has a significant negative impact on our ability to recruit new businesses. Our veterans are highly trained, highly competent, highly tested individuals that we believe we can put to work, not only in startup ventures that they may participate in, but throughout industry in central New York. And we believe that a complex like this can be a key part of our population and workforce recruitment strategy and be a part of a seamless integration with some of the other proposals that are in this area, particularly as you think about cybersecurity, unmanned systems. These are core competencies that many of our service members are coming out of. The final piece is sort of our...
How large is Fort Drum?
Fort Drum, I believe all told, currently how many employees? 28,000?
Yeah, 28,000. There's about 19,000 soldiers, including their families, on base.
A significant asset. New York has a great history of military service, and we think that there's an opportunity to draw not just from places like Fort Drum, but frankly all over the country. The final piece of the strategy is really, and I'm very proud of this, I think that the conversation that happened at our regional council as we were developing the Upstate Revitalization Initiative was enthusiastic about developing a prospectus for investment that we might ask the state of New York for support for what we're trying to do economically. At the same time, I think what you find from our council is a strong sense of service and partnership. And I think we feel very strongly that if we're going to be in a position to ask the state to make a $500 million investment in our region over 5 years, that we also have to provide some guarantees and to provide some insight to all of you and to the state that we are committed to helping to solve our own problems as well. About 2.5 years ago, we launched with the support of our mayor and our county executive, our city council, our county legislature, and dozens of other partners throughout our region, an initiative called the Consensus Commission on Local Government Modernization. It was the first of its kind baseline analysis that took county-wide inventory of all services that are being delivered, which governments are delivering them, what the costs of service delivery are, all the way down to the per capita cost of service delivery of everything from trash collection to DPW and so on and so forth. For the first time, our community in March of last year was given this baseline report that allowed them to compare the costs and understand the total expenditures of local government. You see the statistics here, $1.7 billion in total spending, 36 general purpose municipalities in Onondaga County, 212 independently elected officials, 189 members of planning boards in those 36 municipalities, 169 members of zoning boards of appeals, all told more elected and appointed representatives than the U.S. Congress combined, in a community that has 450,000 people. This is not to denigrate any individual layer of government. What we found in this analysis is that every level of government has done some remarkably innovative things, from the villages all the way up through the county, and every level of government has room for improvement. We are in the midst right now of a public evaluation period. The Consensus Commission has put forward 51 recommendations to the community, and we're currently collecting public input on them. These recommendations are everything from developing intermunicipal agreements to share snowplows, all the way up through and including a proposal for metropolitan government that could provide for the consolidation of city and county government as 89% of the total revenue spend in Onondaga County, but also potentially to include towns and villages as they face fiscal pressures as well. We believe strongly that we can do better when it comes to local government. If you were designing the system today, you would not design it like this. I spent 2.5 hours last night with all of our town supervisors and village mayors walking through this report, as you might imagine. It is a difficult conversation. It is sometimes contentious conversation, but it's a conversation our community must engage in. Our commitment to you at the state is that we will continue to have the hard conversations, whether it's around poverty or local government, in order to ensure that we can be the best possible stewards of the investment that New York State makes in Central New York.
That is what the South sells to get jobs down in South. Because county government is where the power is in southern states. All of them. They run county fire, county planning, county, everything's done on a county or even a regional basis, so you put 2 or 3 counties together. It's the biggest economic development tool that they have, and it's the economic development negative that we've got. So the foundation, when Andrew was talking about, when he was running for governor, all the tens of thousands of different, I think there was 10,000, so the count is even higher, of government entities that exist in the state. So we decided to take the foundation did an in-depth, using Marist Institute, survey of the state. We excluded all the cities. We excluded the cities because cities are a different entity. But when we talked about government consolidation, it's still on our website, DysonFoundation.org. You can look at it. And what it shows is, like you found, everybody's in favor of it, except in their community. You know, we like our fire department. And that's one of the things statewide that we've got. We've got too many fire departments.
We have 58 in Onondaga County alone.
Yeah, and everyone has the ability to tax. And the tax gets layered in. And nobody is going to talk against their local fire department. So they build facilities, they buy the extra engines and all that, whether they need it or not. And I'm not trying to denigrate them, but sure, that's a factor. But that alone is one of the major tools that southern states have to fight us up here.
Listen, I think I've been involved in this conversation, helping leading the consensus effort now for 2.5 years. And if I have a reflection, it is how emotionally raw the conversation is. It is incredibly difficult. It has to be approached without bias towards outcomes. We found a great rallying cry in the concept that we can do better. Frankly, when we initially launched this commission, we did so with the support of our county legislature via a 17-0 vote and our city council via an 8-1 vote. Republicans on one side, Democrats on the other. There is a broad understanding that the system as it is now is not working, is not serving our communities in the way in which we need to. How we change that system is about a lot of things. It's about race, it's about political power, it's about jurisdictions. We are trying to have the conversation as thoughtful and rational way as possible, but we are committed to putting forward solutions that the community can act on. And we certainly in the business community and other civic leaders are going to continue to push on this issue. We're very fortunate we have some very strong leadership in Central New York, and I feel personally that the investments, that whatever outcomes we can drive via the Consensus Commission can have as great an impact as the other investments that we're making on the economic development side. In the long run, whether they be cost savings or improvements in economic competitiveness via restructuring local government, has the potential to eclipse some of the other investments that we might be making.
Snow plowing in my town, 85 miles from here, as opposed to the village, they've finally figured out that they should not lift the plows when they get to the village, that they should keep on going. And that took a lot of effort, just doing that. But that's the start of it.
Absolutely.
And we're starting to share equipment, capital equipment. Don't buy 3 dump trucks, drive 2, and just use them better. So you're right, that's one of the things. It's a lot of little things that amounts to a lot of money.
Well, for anyone who follows this conversation in the last 3.5 weeks, as Jim can attest, we are talking not just about sharing snowplows, but we're talking about consolidation of governments and metropolitan government, city-county collaboration, town and village collaboration. It's a conversation that we've tried on probably for 35 years. It's a conversation we're having now more actively than ever. It will take time, but I am confident that the partners who are driving this are doing so with an eye towards a better future for Central New York, and we're excited about it. We're also excited about the collective impact of our URI proposal. All told, we believe about $3 billion of investment can be leveraged, just over $3 billion by the $500 million that we have asked for in our prospectus. Almost a 7-to-1 return on investment. We know the governor challenged us to 5-to-1. We're proud that we're striving to achieve that.
How do you calculate that, Rob?
We calculate that based on the total capital investment we believe we can leverage, along with the 5-year rolling payroll associated with the job creation associated with that. So, here's what I would say. We joke sometimes about the 5-year or lifetime appointment to the council. It has been a tremendous honor for me to represent our community and to be a steward of the sort of regional strategy. I'm greatly appreciative of that opportunity every single day. Getting to go home and drive by projects that we've had an impact on in our community is incredibly rewarding. And we truly value the partnership that we have with the state, particularly under this governor who's been active, aggressive, supportive, and present in a way that others haven't. And we truly thank you.
Thank you, Rob, Jim, great job. Any questions any additional questions from the directors?
Well, we keep on going on that government consolidation.
Yes, sir.
That's really
We have
really
started
important.
doing that in Manchester. Some of the villages have put together and, have talked about dissolving the villages and having the town taking care of the plows and the fire department and police. So I guess that we're a step ahead.
That's good.
So it's great. You guys did a great job. It's really, I think, important for the ESD board and really all of ESD associates to see the kinds of planning and work that is going on in the regions, and that's really a function of this decentralized strategic approach to economic development that the governor brought in and put in place now over 5 years ago. And these are very concrete examples of the kind of great planning work that's going on and the economic development that comes through ESD with everyone's support, all the directors and everyone. So thank you very much.
And Howard, I apologize. I've had 2 calls from my son's daycare while we sit here, so I'm going to step out and
Yeah, it's outstanding, thank you.
Get out of here and get to work. Thanks.
Thank you. Before we proceed to the presentation of the project items, I'll ask Glendon McCleary to present a summary of those projects. Glenn?
Thank you and good morning. The directors will be requested to consider 10 projects totaling $101,956,000 in loans and grants. The projects include 2 Buffalo Billing Awards, 8 Regional Council Awards, and 2 discretionary awards. The projects will take place in the Western New York, Central, Finger Lakes, Mid-Hudson, and Mohawk Valley regions. Will leverage over $2 billion of additional investment, retain 389 jobs, and create 942 jobs in the state. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Glenn. We will now move to the project section of the agenda, and as we've been our past practice the last few months, we'll vote on these at the conclusion of each regional presentation. Before we get into the projects, I want to welcome on the phone several vice presidents for CNSE, part of SUNY Poly. On the line, I believe we have Tom O'Brien, Scott Bateman, and Chris Walsh, all from SUNY Poly, CNSE. And I think, as you know, really the model that Albany has experienced, the economic resurgence that's happened in Albany around nanosciences, is proved to be a template for other parts of the state, as SUNY Poly is being asked to help bring these types of transformative industries and investments to bear on other regions of the state. And because they are so intimately involved with sourcing these deals, negotiating these deals, inking these deals, we wanted to include them in the meeting, and so they would be available to answer any questions as well. So Tom, Scott, Chris, I want to thank you guys in advance for participating in our meeting. Are you all on the line?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we're all on the line. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Because we have a few projects during the course of the meeting today, Athenex and Hitachi and Sora, that all connect back to SUNY Poly. So thank you, gentlemen, for being on the line. With that, Jim, I'll turn it to you, Central New York projects.
Thank you, Howard. I'll be presenting 4 projects to the board from the Central New York region today. The first project, the board is being asked to approve a $1.6 million grant on a $4 million project to renovate a parking garage in downtown Syracuse. This project is underway and will be receiving partial payments, and they have hit their first threshold. It's scheduled to be completed by the summer of this year. The key component of this parking is to not only solve some parking issues in downtown, but because of this parking garage, which is adjacent to a currently vacant old department store, which is in the process of being renovated, it'll lead to the location of a company to move back into the city that'll save 400 jobs and lead to the creation of additional 400 jobs because of this. So this was a significant investment for our downtown. The next is a $500,000 grant to recapitalize a quasi-equity loan fund for the Central New York Enterprise Development Corporation. This is a regional loan fund that has been in operation for over 20 years. This particular loan fund targets early-stage businesses and new ventures within existing firms that typically have difficulty of receiving traditional financing. And total project cost on this is $550,000. The next one is for Cazenovia College, and it's a $375,000 grant on a $2.2 million project, and this will help with the renovation, construction, and infrastructure improvements for the New York State Center of Equine Business Development Center. The equine business, this is located in Madison County, is a very significant business in that area. It also supports the efforts that the governor has recently made investments into the state fairgrounds to improve the equine industry and turn it into a year-round competition and horse shows and that type of investments. Finally, the final grant is a $700 or $70 million grant to the Fort Schuler Management Corporation on behalf of the SUNY College of Nanoscience and Technology and Engineering for the benefit of a company called Sora. This is the state will be also putting an additional $20 million of discretionary funding in on this $1.9 billion project that will lead to the creation of 420 jobs. Construction on this facility has already started and is projected to be completed in December of this year. Sora is a leader in the field of energy efficient and reliable LED lighting technology that creates exceptional efficiency and brilliant gallium nitrate. Sora is the only LED manufacturer using this gallium nitrate crystals for their products and makes it an innovative and renovating product.
Great. We'll ask the directors if they have any questions on any of these 1, 2, 3, 4 projects, right, that you've presented. And Chris, maybe you can tell us a bit more about Sora and just a little bit more about the SUNY Poly model that was kind of pioneered in Albany with, the way the assets are kind of in the public domain, so to speak. So can you speak to that for a bit about maybe Sora without being too technical as to what gallium nitrate and all that is, but maybe something about this company and something about the economic model that SUNY Poly has really pioneered in many ways.
Sure. One of the Sora is a company that's now based in Fremont, California, and one of the founders of the company actually won the Nobel Prize in Physics this past fall for his work in LED lighting. And I wish I could explain exactly what he won it for, but it had something to do with developing the blue LED light, which allowed them to get a brilliant white light, which was not possible in the past. So this company comes out of that research, and they'll be building their North American headquarters in DeWitt, which is right outside Syracuse. And the model we use is that, rather than handing them a check and saying, go build yourselves a state-of-the-art building and buy yourselves state-of-the-art tools, we do that ourselves. We will own the building, the state will own the building, the state will own the tools. So this is neither a grantor alone. Their part of the bargain is to provide the jobs, as Jim mentioned, 420 direct jobs, 170 indirect jobs, and to make operating expenses over a period of at least 10 years. The minimum operating expenses when we signed the deal, they were projecting at $130 million a year, but in recent conversations I've had with their CFO, he's expecting it now to be about $186 million a year.
So, question?
Yeah, sure, question.
What does that mean? Does that mean that that we or some arm of the state will be owning the facility? Will they have the opportunity over time to buy it?
We will be owning, absolutely. The Fort Scholar Management
should they have the
Corporation,
opportunity
the
to buy it?
not-for-profit company aligned with SUNY Polytech Institute, will own the facility and the production tools inside the facility.
Should they have the opportunity to buy it on some basis in the future?
They possibly could. We haven't discussed that or negotiated that, but that's a possibility.
Well, you may want to ask them. I mean, that's an extra inducement for them to have a footprint here. I mean, is there any, in reading this thing, is there any length of time that they have to stay, or is it a lease kind of a thing, or what is it? How is it structured? Because it's not very clear in this.
We anticipate it to be at least 10 years, but it easily could go for a second 10-year period as well. We tend not to look past 20 years, though.
Yeah, I appreciate that, but is it a lease deal, or how is it structured?
Yes, it is a lease.
Okay, now, did they have an opportunity to buy the facility, or should they have the opportunity to buy the facility and the equipment?
That's a question we haven't broached with them, but I think that's something that's worth discussing.
Well, I'm just thinking do we want to be property owners? Over time, I think we ought to see, just philosophically, I mean, maybe it's just me, but philosophically, we ought to think about giving them the opportunity after 5 years to start putting their lease payments toward an opportunity or an option to buy it and buy all the equipment and eventually cede all the maintenance and all the future capital costs totally to them.
So
The model we use here in SUNY Poly is we, again, own all the facilities and the tools, and we're replicating that out in Buffalo with Riverbend, and now at Syracuse with Sora. But after 10 years has gone by, or maybe 5 years has gone by, it's not out of the question that transfer of the sale of those assets are possible. It's just something we haven't done in the past, and we haven't talked with them about doing yet.
Yeah, but should we? I mean, we haven't done it in the past, but should we? I mean, we're starting to talk, this is a Mondo project. I mean, this is a big project. And it strikes me that we're not in the running a manufacturing facility. We're not capable of doing it, I don't believe. I'm not sure that we want to get that capability and build that into our cost.
We don't operate it. They operate it. We own it. They operate it.
I understand, but you said that we own the building and the equipment, right?
Yes.
Okay. Well, why don't we do a deal where at least they start buying the equipment? The building, I can understand, you can always convert although I don't think you can convert a special built building, but I'm just concerned about kind of long term. I think we want them to be with our grants, with them to use that as a seed for them to be taking over the operation and the operating cost and the operating complexity that they would have as owners versus people paying on leases.
So Chris, let me just jump in for 1 sec. I think the point has been made, and there's nothing in our arrangement or the deal that precludes that down the road. And I'm guessing you're going to say that the state, institutions own it in part because, almost by definition, as was the case with Nano, these are very, let's call these emerging industries and companies intentionally. And by virtue of owning the assets, it's a hedge for the public investment, because just by definition, these companies and these industries are very changeable. Some of them can grow dynamically and in ways that nobody could have imagined, and others could be potentially, hit by unexpected turbulence. So it is a way, I think, right, of the asset to remain with the state, and as a way of protecting the public investment.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay, but be that as it may, over a period of time, they'll know what direction it's going.
Yeah, and so over time, I think.
I think we ought to. I don't know. Frankly, I think we ought to have that as part of the effort, is to seed these things over time to the industry that it's serving.
Okay, so point taken, Rob.
Yeah,
I think well said.
Just
Chris, I know you heard the feedback from Director Dyson. Any other questions with respect to any of the projects, the 4 projects that Jim has presented? Jim, one of the things I just want to add is, we're typically not in the business of parking garages, and so it's just important to note that that's really a component of a much larger project, a real downtown Syracuse revitalization project, more than a, quote-unquote parking garage. It's really to enable the repopulating of this sort of downtown core and corridor. And as you all know, this, downtown revitalization and, creating density in these downtowns is an important component of economic development. It's not that we are just out, soliciting for parking lot renovations or parking ramp renovations or anything like that. So I just want to clarify that.
And incidentally, I want to clarify,
Syracuse, right?
I want to clarify my remarks, that I am not against this concept or this project. I'm just suggesting that there might be a tweak that we might want to add to allow them to be able to take over what we are ceding to them on a full-time ownership basis over time. So that, I want to make it clear that I'm not against this project or the way it's constructed. I just think that maybe as a further inducement, that if it really works, that they get a chance to take it over. That's my point.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
I'm not against it, believe me.
All right, excellent.
Chris, just a quick question on the benefit cost on the SORA. Will you comment on that?
The benefit cost of SORA?
Yeah, just on the fiscal ratio and the economic ratio.
Not really sure what you're referring to.
You may not have, that's a benefit cost model that we do internally.
Anybody else on the team?
Chris, this is the benefit cost model that we do that calculates, takes the $90 million investment that we're making as the cost, and then it divides that into the increased wages associated with the project. So the reason that it's 2 to 1, I think the direct wages here are $180 million estimated. This does not include the larger $1.8 billion investment. For that cost benefit model, we only use direct wages. So it just doesn't include that number.
Okay.
I think the other thing it doesn't fully take into consideration is that the asset actually continues to stay in the ownership of the state, which,
Right.
kind of makes it a little trickier to do the analysis. But any other questions for Jim on the 4 projects from the directors?
Move.
Any comments from the public on any of the 4 items? A, B, C, D. No, that's okay.
I like your energy, Rob.
You're-
I had too much coffee or
No, no,
I
you're,
didn't sleep last night.
you're reminding me to keep it moving along. Any comments from the public on these items? Rob, is there a motion to approve?
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you so much. Megan Taylor, our director from Mid-Hudson. Are you on the line, Megan? No, Megan?
Oh, yes. Sorry, Howard.
Okay.
I had you. I didn't hit mute fast enough.
All right, no problem. Megan, you're up.
Yep. So good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the board and Commissioner Zemsky. I'm presenting today Pratt & Whitney's expansion project in Middletown, Orange County, and asking for board approval for a $900,000 capital grant. Pratt & Whitney, a United Technologies Corporation company, is a world leader in the design, manufacturing, and servicing of aircraft engines and auxiliary power units. In 2013, Pratt & Whitney chose to locate their coating plant in Middletown in Orange County over sites in Maine and Pennsylvania. ESD made an offer of $2.5 million, of which $1.6 million was Excelsior tax credits and the $900,000 grant I'm presenting today to entice Pratt & Whitney to invest $140 million to purchase and fit out a 71,500 square foot plant for a new secure thermal barrier coating facility for its airfoils to meet their growing demand, retain 95 jobs at its 60 Turner Drive Middletown location, and create an additional 60 net new jobs. To date, Pratt & Whitney has satisfied the terms to receive its first disbursement, which were to invest $26 million in the purchase and initial outfit of the 71,500 square foot plant, retain the 95 jobs at 60 Turner Drive, and create 27 jobs. So I'm asking the board today to approve the $900,000 capital grant so that Pratt & Whitney can continue to invest in its plan and create an additional 32 jobs by 2019. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Great. Any questions from the directors on this Pratt & Whitney project? Any comments from the public on this item? I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Megan. Ken Tompkins.
No problem.
Thank you, Megan. Ken, are you on the line?
Good morning, Howard. Good morning, directors. The directors are being asked to approve an ESD capital grant of $650,000 for OWL Wire and Cable. OWL operates 3 manufacturing facilities totaling 350,000 square feet in all in both the Mohawk Valley and Central regions. The project presented for your consideration today regards its facility located in the city of Rome. OWL is one of 13 companies that are part of the Marmon Wire and Cable Group, which in turn is owned by Berkshire Hathaway. Marmon is the 16th largest maker of wire and cable in the world. OWL, in particular, by the way, makes wire products for the oil, gas, nuclear, and wind energy industries. In 2010, OWL sought ESD support for a $1,775,000 project that would make much-needed improvements to a dilapidated and abandoned facility that they acquired in the wake of the collapse of the former Rome Cable Corporation. The project included important structural and safety modifications to the building involving roof, flooring, structure, girders and beams and that kind of stuff. As the company contemplated these repairs, it informed us that it was weighing the move of all 3 of its facilities in upstate to a consolidated facility in another state. As a result, ESD offered OWL Wire and Cable a $650,000 capital grant for this project to retain its 152 upstate New York employees and for the creation of 3 new full-time jobs. This project was completed in August 2015, and I can answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for Ken on this project from the directors? Yes, sir.
It's a factual thing. This says that it sounds like it's a stub of Berkshire Hathaway, but then it says it's privately owned. So I think there must be a discrepancy here in the facts.
Okay. Do you know if this is part of Berkshire Hathaway, Ken, or is it independently owned?
It's a private company that's a subset of Marmon. Marmon is owned by Berkshire Hathaway.
So subset means what?
I'm sorry, it's an LLC. I don't know if it would strictly be called a subsidiary, but it's, and I guess you would say it's ultimately held by Berkshire Hathaway. I'm not sure I'm answering your question well.
That's what it seems like this, that's the conclusion I reach from this, but that's the question I'm asking.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, my belief is it's a part of the greater Berkshire Hathaway enterprise.
That's correct.
That's correct?
It is.
Okay,
held by Berkshire
great,
Hathaway.
thank you. Any other questions from the directors on this item for Ken? Any comments from the public on this item? Is there a motion to approve?
Second.
Thank you, all in favor?
Aye.
Excellent, thank you, Ken. Chris Shefflin, ESD's...
Thank you, directors.
Thank you, sir. Chris Shefflin, ESD's
I know.
Western New York Director. You've got 3 items, Chris.
Good morning, Howard. Good morning to everybody. The first project is the Buffalo Billion Initiative that falls under one of our region's key enablers, Smart Growth, specifically the Better Buffalo Fund, or BBF. The BBF is a $30 million initiative dedicated to urban projects that encourage density and growth along transportation corridors and revitalized commercial districts. And we have completed the first round of BBF and awarded 21 projects for a total of $11.7 million in loans and grants. One of the original 21 projects is the Niagara Gateway project, which we are requesting approval this morning of a $1,810,000 loan from the Buffalo Innovation Cluster Fund toward the company's $15.4 million project that includes acquisition and renovation of the currently vacant 75,000 square foot 4-story former Buffalo Milk Company building in 885 Niagara Street on the west side of Buffalo, New York. The project will create 53 high-quality, affordable rental units, commercial and outdoor space. Loan terms are 1% interest only for 30 years and consistent with our partners at the New York State HCR, Housing Community Renewal, recommended for this project. Moving to the second project, the directors are requested to approve a $341,000 grant from the Regional Council Capital Fund to the city of Dunkirk for a portion of the $3 million total construction cost of reconstructing Lakefront Boulevard and the associated break wall between North Main Street and Wright Park Drive in Dunkirk. This is a 2013 CFA priority project.
The $3 million project involved the demolition and reconstruction of approximately 950 feet of seawall, accessibility, amenities, bike paths, and additional amenities. The project is consistent with the Western New York Regional Plan as it serves to revitalize Dunkirk's waterfront by supporting infrastructure improvements with the goal of increasing tourism. The project was completed in December of 2015. The third and final project from Western New York is a Buffalo Billion Initiative as well. Phoenix is a project in part of the governor's initiative to promote advanced technology and manufacturing. The grantee would be Fort Schuyler Management Corporation. The investment is a grant of up to $25 million, and the project involves the build-out of approximately 51,000 square feet on the 6th floor of the newly constructed Conventus Center for Collaborative Medicine building at 1001 Main Street in the Buffalo Niagara Medical Campus for the acquisition and installation of machinery and equipment, including specialized biochemical equipment necessary to establish Phoenix's North American headquarters, a formulation product development center, and a pilot plant where oncology products are perfected and refined before the technology is transferred for large-scale production in Dunkirk. Over the next 10 years, the Phoenix is expected to invest more than $100 million in additional capital and non-capital expenses at the project location, and the project is expected to create 500 jobs by January 1st, 2022.
Great, thanks, Chris.
I'll answer any questions.
Yep, before we open it up to questions, I just want to introduce Tom O'Brien, who's a VP for SUNY Poly, is on the line. And I think you all know, you may know, the governor was in Western New York recently to announce a Phoenix facilities both in downtown Buffalo, which is a project we're talking about today, and also out in Dunkirk. Tom, are you on the line?
Yes, I am.
Great, Tom. Thank you so much for joining us. Can you talk a little bit about Phoenix as well in sort of layman's language, and kind of what they do and what appeals to what's so appealing about the company?
Okay, actually, as far as the company is concerned, I'll let Chris expand on that a little bit, and I can talk more about the sixth floor project after that.
Phoenix is a Buffalo-grown company. It's been in existence for about 8 years, and its initial investors were all Buffalo folks from Buffalo. Came out of Niagara Medical Center, and they work on cutting-edge, high-toxicity oncology, cancer-curing drugs. As the governor announced last week, they will be building over the next several years a manufacturing center in Dunkirk, and they will also be establishing over the next few months their North American headquarters on one of the floors of the Conventus building, which is in the medical area of downtown Buffalo. At that headquarters, they'll have executive offices and administrative offices, but also a lot of lab and R&D space. That's where they'll be testing their formulas before they take them down to Dunkirk to produce the ultimate products.
Thanks, Chris. Tom, do you want to add anything to that?
Yes, and I'll just say that this $25 million grant is for the fit-up of that space, which Fort Schuyler currently holds a lease on. So the $25 million will be used for a fit-up of the space and the acquisition of all of the equipment to be used in their R&D facility.
Okay. Are there any questions from the directors on either of the three items that Chris has presented?
Chris, just a quick question on Phoenix. You indicated that over the next decade they're expected to invest over $100 million of additional capital. Is any of the grant conditioned on that?
It is not.
Okay.
I mean, we have a contract with them, and that's their commitment in the contract, but it's not. I wouldn't say it's conditioned.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions from directors? Any comments from the public on either of these three items that Chris Shufflin took us through? Is there a motion to approve the three items?
So moved.
Second. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, everybody.
Yep, thank you. Simone will now present the Market New York Grant Program item and the Regional Council Award Projects consent calendar for the director's consideration. Simone.
Good morning. The next three awards on the agenda will be presented together since they fund the same project. The directors are requested to approve 3 capital grants to the Margaret Woodbury Strong Museum, doing business as the Strong National Museum of Play. 2 of the grants are from the Market New York program and were applied for and received under round 3 and 4 of the CFA process, and 1 grant is from round 4 of the Regional Council Capital Fund. ESD's total assistance will comprise $780,000. The museum, which first opened to the public in 1982, was founded in 1968 by Margaret Woodbury Strong to house her vast collection of dolls and toys. These grants assisted the museum to complete a construction and renovation project which merged the Toy Industry Association's Toy Industry Hall of Fame alongside the museum's own National Toy Hall of Fame. The museum added 5,000 square feet of space and installed a high-tech gallery with a 20-foot tall virtual bubble tower and a towering kinetic sculpture composed of toys, as well as innovative hands-on exhibits. The project was completed in November 2015 at a total cost of approximately $4.3 million. The museum is expected to retain 142 jobs and create 10 jobs through January 2019, of which it has already created 5. Thank you.
Thank you, Simone. Any comments or questions from the board on these items? Any comments from the public on these items? I'll entertain a motion to approve these items. Is there a second? Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you so much, Simone.
Thank you.
Our next item on the agenda is the non-discretionary projects consent calendar. Ed Mazinski will present that item. Ed, please.
Good morning, everyone. Non-discretionary projects refer to those listed in the New York State budget that enhance the state's communities through cultural, educational, research and development, and civic organizations. And these projects originate from the governor, assembly, or senate, and ESD is named to administer the funding. ESD does not select the recipients of this funding. This month there are 6 projects for your consideration, the first 5 of which are executive sponsored. The first, a $500,000 working capital grant to the Northeast Unmanned Aerial Systems Airspace Integration Research Alliance, known as New Air, for data collection activities at the Griffiths International Airport in Rome. This is part of the Research and Testing Consortium set up in 2012 for the FAA's testing of unmanned aerial systems. The project is ongoing with the data collection completion expected at the end of 2016. The other 2 grants are bundled together for a total of $500,000 to Niagara County Industrial Development Agency for the Niagara Falls Air Reserve Mercy Flight Program. These grants will be used to renovate a former Army Reserve Center to house aircraft for Mercy Flight's air ambulance operations. The project is ongoing with completion expected in May of 2017. The next is a $5 million grant to the SUNY Research Foundation on behalf of SUNY Polytechnic's College for Nanoscale Science and Engineering to acquire a critical dimension scanning electron microscope at SUNY's Nanotech complex in Albany. This is a very specialized microscope, and it's a critical tool for the ongoing efforts of the Photovoltaic Manufacturing Consortium and other consortia that are housed at the Nanotech complex. The machine is expected to be in place in April 2016. The final item is related to the item that Jim Thale presented for the Central New York Hub for Emerging Nano Industries and Sora Incorporated, the specific company. It's a $20 million capital grant added to his $70 million grant to Fort Schuyler Management Corporation on behalf of Sora Incorporated. And as you heard earlier, this is for the Central New York facility in DeWitt that will become a hub for emerging nano industries, and specifically, Sora is a next-generation LED lighting manufacturer. So that's all I have. I'm sorry, there's one more. Forgive me. This is the assembly-sponsored item. The sixth item, a $2 million assembly-sponsored grant to the Bronx Children Museum for this museum's permanent home. It didn't have a home up to now, and the museum provides arts, education, and cultural programs to children and families in schools, community centers, and shelters. The grant will be used to renovate a building at the Bronx Terminal Market where the museum will be housed. The project is expected to be completed at the end of 2016. And I am that's it for my presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Ed. Before we turn to questions from the directors, again, I want to introduce Scott Bateman and Chris from SUNY Poly. Gentlemen, can you add anything to the item around Hitachi and the consortium? Give us some context or anything that you feel would be helpful.
The Hitachi CD-SEM tool is a critical component for the G450C semiconductor consortium that the governor announced in 2012 and has been ongoing here at SUNY Poly now for the past 3 to 4 years, as well as a critical tool for the photovoltaic manufacturing consortium that we also manage here, which is supported by a major federal grant from the Department of Energy and other solar manufacturing industry participants.
Great, thank you. Was that Scott?
Yes.
All right, thanks, Scott. Are there any questions or comments from the directors on any of the items that Ed presented? Any comments from the public on any of these items? Is there a motion to approve the items presented?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? Excellent. We'll now turn to the administrative actions. I'll ask Toby Giassimi to present an item relating to the amendment of a contract in connection with the Atlantic Yards Land Use Improvement and Civic Project. Toby.
Good morning, directors. You're being asked to approve a $1.2 million contract extension for STV Inc. The company currently serves as ESD's owner's representative on the project site. As it stands, there are 4 very active construction sites that are on the project at the moment. STV has served its role since 2010, and this will be the 3rd extension of the contract, which will total $5 million. I'm available to answer any questions as you might have.
Any questions from the directors on this item of Atlantic Yards? Any comment from the public on this item? Is there a motion to approve?
Moved. Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. John Discolo will now present an item relating to the renewal of the corporation's corporate insurance policies. John.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the board, ESD colleagues, members of the public. Today, Thursday, February 18, 2016, the directors will be respectively requested to authorize the renewal of the corporation's 2016-17 insurance policies as presented in the board materials. ESD's corporate insurance policies expire annually in February 28 to be exact, and therefore each year we obtain the director's authorization to renew the policies and pay their related premiums. The policies include directors and officers liability, employment practices liability, workers' compensation, employee crime and dishonesty, real property, excess umbrella liability, commercial general liability, and auto liability. In anticipation of renewing ESD's 2016-17 corporate insurance policies, ESD's insurance and risk management staff partnered with Willis Towers Watson, formerly Willis of New York, and the Kevel Agency, an ESD WB insurance consultant. Both parties are present today to confirm the appropriate levels of coverage, and we authorize Willis to solicit quotes from highly rated insurance carriers at the most advantageous cost to the corporation. As a result of this marketing effort, Willis has recommended and staff concurs with the purchase of the aforementioned policies. We are hereby requesting that the board authorize the renewal of the seven existing policies as set forth in the board materials for a total cost of $528,377. The renewal premium cost of $528,377 represents a 10.8% or $51,667 year-over-year increase in policy premiums. The increase was driven primarily by a rise in our workers' compensation premium, $20,782, most notably an increase in our estimated annual payroll with respect to workers' compensation, coupled with a $30,230 increase in our directors and officers liability, employment practices liability due to claims experience. In closing, the directors are hereby requested to authorize the purchase of the insurance policies with the respective carriers as set forth in materials for a total premium cost for 2016-17 of $528,377. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, John. Are there any questions from directors on this issue of insurance presented by John?
Howard, just a very brief comment. John is an officer of Marsh & McLennan. I would just ask you that if Marsh is involved in any of our placements, that you bring that to my attention so I can acknowledge that.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, duly noted. Any other questions or comments for John? Any comments from the public on this item? Is there a motion to approve?
Move it.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you, John. Steve Golick is up next and will present an item relating to the proposed acquisition of the Port Terminal Complex by the Erie Canal Harbor Development Corporation, which is a subsidiary of ESD. As I noted earlier, I will recuse myself from any discussion related to this item, and I will not vote on this item. Steve?
Thank you, Howard. Just a little bit of background. In 2014, Erie Canal Harbor acquired about 350 acres of vacant property from the Niagara Frontier Transportation Authority located on Lake Erie in the city of Buffalo's Outer Harbor. Since that acquisition and pursuant to Governor Cuomo's vision, approximately 200 acres has become a state park through agreements between Erie Canal Harbor and New York State Parks. And State Parks has made significant improvements to the park, improved paths, green space, shelters, playgrounds already constructed, and they're doing additional improvements coming up this spring. As part of that transfer, the property from the NFTA to Erie Canal Harbor, both Erie Canal Harbor and ESD were required to provide the NFTA indemnification for any environmental issues associated with the property unless the issue was caused directly by the NFT during its ownership. Erie Canal Harbor is now moving forward with acquisition of another 50 acres of property from the NFTA that includes 2 vacant warehouses and 2 smaller buildings commonly referred to as the Port Terminal Complex. The property is adjacent to the 350 acres we previously acquired, and the plan here is really to get the property in the proper hands. You know, Erie Canal Harbor's role is to improve Buffalo's waterfront, and the NFTA is divesting itself now of all of its outer harbor properties. It's expected that when acquired, Erie Canal Harbor will put it out for an RFP and look for development proposals. Basic terms of the transfer will require Erie Canal Harbor to pay the fair market value of the property, which is $3.5 million. That will be paid by Erie Canal Harbor from the proceeds of any sale of the property, and if the sale does not equal or exceed the $3.5 million, Erie Canal Harbor will pay the balance over 15 years starting in 2020. ESD's sole
role in the transfer is to provide a guarantee regarding the environmental indemnification to the NFTA, identical to what was provided for the past property acquisition. Just a little bit background, numerous studies, reports have been done about the property, and really what we're dealing with here is it's fill. Prior to 1900, this property didn't exist, and over the course of 50, 60 years, it was reclaimed land with dredgings and other materials. So while the property is known to have some soil contamination, the levels do not require any particular action in its current use, which most recently was distribution warehouse and light manufacturing. However, it is expected that if development occurs that involves extensive excavation activities or more involved use, such as residential, additional remediation measures will be required. Based on the foregoing, the directors are required to authorize the corporation to enter in the necessary agreements to effectuate the terminal property transfer to Erie Canal Harbor as stated in the materials before you. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Any questions or comments from the directors on this transfer item? Any comments from the public on this item? Is there a motion to approve?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The only remaining item on the agenda is for the director's information, and be included in your board book. There's no presentation on that. May I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.